I'm NBC Connecticut Storm Tracker meteorologist Rochelle J. I want to give you an early Wednesday afternoon update on September 25th for what is now Hurricane Helene. We just got in that 2 p.m. update. Still a Category 1 hurricane with 80-mile-an-hour winds. The storm is now moving north-northwest at 10 miles per hour. You can see we've got the Yucatan Peninsula here. This is western Cuba just behind me. And this storm, again, moving north-northwest, so it's pulling away from these areas. Let's take a look at how the season is shaping up so far. As far as named storms, we are now up to 8. 5 hurricanes, and so far only 1 major hurricane, but likely within the next 24 hours we will see that number up to 2 with Helene. Here's a bigger picture of the tropical satellite. I just want to show you the full size of this storm. So the center of the storm down here just off the Yucatan Peninsula, but some of those outer rain bands are already impacting areas of Florida, some areas of Alabama, as well as Georgia right now. So keep in mind the sheer size of this storm, because when I show you the track, that's only showing you the center and not the full extent of how large the storm may be. So I want to switch it over just to show you the radar. We've got those rain bands here that are showing up in Florida and again some other parts of the southeastern U.S. But imagine there's rain all in here. The radars just aren't picking that up. So we'll see that fill in a bit more as it moves closer and closer to the lower 48. Showing you now those sea surface temperatures. Anything in that very deep burgundy, almost black color, that's when we're talking about those sea surface temperatures at about mid to actually just upper 80s, maybe even close to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is widespread here where the storm is going to be moving in the far eastern Gulf of Mexico. So Helene is going to feed on those warm waters. And as it does, we're going to see this thing strengthen pretty quickly within the next 24 hours, likely to a major hurricane, a Category 3 storm. Tropical cyclone heat potential. So this is just showing you where we have very warm waters below the surface. How far down does the very warm waters go? So where Helene is right now and where it's going over the next little bit, we've got a decent amount of that heat content below the surface. So again, not just the sea surface that we look at, we have to look below that. How much warm water below that sea surface does a storm have to feed off of? And that increases the likelihood of not just sustaining, but also the storm strengthening as it continues in its lifetime. So that does decrease just a bit as we move a little bit farther north and get closer to landfall in Florida. But still, we have very warm waters at the surface that the storm can feed off of. Now, we also do have something that's called wind shear. So that's a change of wind direction or speed as you go higher in the atmosphere. So we've got a little bit of that where Helene is moving, but we've got a lot of warm water below the surface. So it's going to be fighting against this shear just a little bit. But something else that we were watching yesterday was the amount of dry air indicated by the tan colors that was just north of Helene. It's kind of eroded some of that. So everything you're seeing here in the teal, that is Helene, the full swath of the storm, again, reaching already into the southeast U.S., and we're probably 24 plus hours from anticipated landfall. So we'll continue to watch these outer bands impacting parts of the southeast U.S. and also impacting some other areas of the Caribbean and the Yucatan as we head through the rest of the day today. So here's a look at the current advisories, watches, and warnings that are in place. We do have tropical storm warnings also in place for far western Cuba, as well as some hurricane watch, I believe, that's also in place there. Now, for the U.S., we've got tropical storm warning for most of the Florida coastline. We also do have a hurricane warning for the areas that we're anticipating to see at least 75-mile-per-hour winds. Now, this doesn't take into effect or it doesn't consider the storm surge or the flooding potential that the storm can bring. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. I want to show you the cone. Again, this only shows you the center of the storm. That storm is decently massive. Again, moving over those very warm waters of the eastern Gulf of Mexico, eventually becoming a Category 3 hurricane, possibly as early as Thursday morning. So we'll see how quickly the storm is able to strengthen with the warm water. Again, making that landfall somewhere along the Big Bend of Florida. Once it moves inland, it'll quickly lose that source of fuel, and it will quickly start to weaken during the day on Friday and into the weekend as well. So here's a look at future radar to show you the rain with this storm. And this kind of helps to keep in mind how large the storm actually is. And I want to remind you, this is just one computer model output. Some other things are showing slightly different solutions as to where this storm will go and where it will make landfall. But I want to illustrate for you just the full swath of where this storm is. So stopping it here on Wednesday evening, showing that well-defined eye, and that continues to be well-defined as we move through the day on Thursday. Eventually the storm making landfall. Still looks like Thursday evening is going to be that time when that eye crosses over land somewhere in western Florida. So we'll monitor that, but watch this. Look how far north these rain bands go into the U.S. So we're talking about Kentucky, Tennessee, dealing with Helene before it even makes landfall. And it looks like maybe the storm might not even, the center of the storm may not even go over eastern areas of places like Kentucky and Tennessee, but still impacts potential there in those states. So we'll keep an eye on the exact track of this storm. So that is to be determined exactly where that landfall is, and then where the eventual tropical storm, tropical depression, and remnant low will go with this system a little later this week. So let's talk about the rainfall with Helene. We actually do have a very rare level 4 out of 4 risk for flash flooding in the southeastern U.S. for Thursday, for tomorrow. So that does include some areas of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, western areas of the Carolinas, and then northeastern Georgia included in that high risk for excessive rainfall. More widespread area for that level 3. That level 3 will shrink and move northward for Friday for some areas of Virginia as well as North Carolina. Again, still western zones of those states that will monitor for that higher chance for flash flooding. But all of these areas from Arkansas and Missouri all the way back over to the mid-Atlantic and the Delmarva have an increased risk for flash flooding for whatever is left of Helene on Friday. Let's talk about how much rain we could be talking. 5, 6, 7+ inches of rain is possible somewhere in the southeastern U.S. Still pinpointing where we could see some of those higher rain totals, but it looks like the southeast for sure. So this is the European model's output for how much rain we could see. Now those numbers change just a bit, and you'll notice that when I switch it over to the American model, increasing some areas, decreasing the rainfall for others. So just know a general area of where some of that heaviest rain is going to set up as we go. This is through early on Sunday morning, so right about midnight Saturday heading into Sunday is what I'm showing you with these two outputs. Now, in addition to that, we also have storm surge warnings in place along that western Florida coastline for Helene. Potential storm surge in parts of Florida, 12, 13, 15 feet in this area of purple right here. So that's where we're looking right around. We're anticipating that landfall for the highest amounts of storm surge, 12 to possibly 15 feet in some of those areas. In addition to all of that, we're also going to be watching a severe weather threat as Helene pushes closer and eventually starts to move over land in the southeast U.S. Now, the biggest threat from Helene with severe weather is going to be that risk for tornadoes. We have a level 1, 2, and 3 risk for tornadoes, and that's concentrated in areas of far southern South Carolina and then into far southeastern Georgia. So you see here is that Florida-Georgia state line right here, Jacksonville at the bottom of your screen, and I put Charleston at the top just to give you a frame of reference. Does include Savannah and Brunswick as well for that highest tornado threat, that bullseye for the highest risk for seeing spin-up tornadoes as Helene does move over land for tomorrow. Now on Friday, that risk goes way down, thankfully, but it also shifts north. So we've got a level 1 out of 5 risk for areas like southern Virginia and most of the eastern half of North Carolina. A good chunk of North Carolina is under that severe weather risk for your Friday. Now, elsewhere in the tropics, we've got a couple of areas that we're keeping an eye on, one with a much lower chance for developing into at least a tropical depression within the next week. And then we also have this other area in the far eastern Atlantic that we've been keeping an eye on for a few days, 80% chance to become at least a tropical depression within the next 7 days. So here's a look at the list of names. If that system in the far eastern Atlantic becomes a tropical storm, it would gain the name Isaac. So we are about a third of the way through the list for the list of names for the 2024 season. Thank you so much for watching this tropical update. If you are in the line of Helene or any future storms, make sure that you're prepared, make sure that you're staying safe. If you're interested, you don't have to, but you can follow me across social media for more weather updates, whether it's hurricane season or any other type of weather updates. I do like to keep people informed as to what is going on.